Hi, good morning, everybody. Welcome to CTL's Education Professional Development Series. I'm Stephanie Shea, the Marketing Manager here at CTL. And for those of you who are not familiar with CTL, we're headquartered in Portland, Oregon. We've been here for over 26 years and provide IT solutions for education, government, and we're also a Google for Education partner. Some of our more popular products include ruggedized to-go PC laptops, but Chromebooks are mainly what we are doing now. They're designed specifically for K-12 education. And over the last 3 years, we've worked with Google to introduce a line of Chromebooks, and they've been recommended by PC Magazine as the best choice for Chromebooks in education. Today's webinar is going to be an introduction to Google Sites, and if you haven't heard, Google Sites has made some changes recently, so even if you have used it before, I think there's going to be some great information. Our presenter is Katherine Livick. She's our Professional Development Partner from Education Service District 112 of Vancouver, Washington. And before we get going, I'm just going to go over a few items so that everyone knows how to participate in today's event. You're listening in using your computer speaker system by default. Hopefully everyone's seeing the screenshot of the attendee interface. If you'd prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit some questions today. Just type them into the questions pane during the presentation and we'll address them at the end during a Q&A session. And before we begin, we would like to find out who has used Google Sites at all, even in the older versions. So we'll give people a minute to fill this out, your level of experience with Google Sites. Looks like almost everyone's answered. Okay. I think that's everything. Great. So we have a nice split. Let me share this with everybody. So basically, it looks like a third have no experience, a third have some, and a third have a lot of experience. So I think this is going to be good information for Katherine, and again, those with a lot of experience will still learn something new today from the updates for the new Google Sites. So now I would like to introduce our presenter, Katherine Livick, from Professional Development Partner Education Service District 112 of Vancouver, Washington. Katherine is a Google Certified Trainer and Google Certified Administrator, and she's going to show you some of the new features available in the new Google Sites.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning. Let me get the screen over to you. Oh yeah, and hide this poll. There we go. Okay. Did you get the screen?
I don't think I did, actually. It's not telling me that you can see it. So if you can't see it, then that's a problem.
Yeah, let's see what's going on. I'll change it back.
You just never know what kind of adventures the webinar software is going to give you.
Okay, I'll go back to me.
Okay. Oh.
Then I will go back to you.
Oh, there we go. Now it says I'm the presenter. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Some kind of technical difficulty. Okay, I assume you can see that now?
I can, yes.
Right on. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Katherine. And I just I work for ESD 112 in Vancouver, Washington, and I am a technology coach, integration specialist, and consultant, and we work with a lot of school districts in our region, big districts, small districts, so we get to see a lot of different implementations of the Google tools. And so it's always kind of fun to do these webinars, and hopefully we have a little bit of knowledge of how these are actually getting used in schools so we can be helpful to you. The new Google Sites tool just came out a little while ago. And if you've used the old one, you're going to notice some pretty significant differences, and hopefully many of them are quite welcome because this was highly overdue. But they're still calling this the early release phase of this tool. So what that means is that even though there's a lot of new stuff and it looks totally different, it's still, excuse me, limited in the features that it has. So as we go through this, if you've never seen it before, you might be going, well, where's that thing? And can I do this thing? And why can't I do that thing? And that is exactly what I say to myself every time I use it. And I'll let you in on as much of the gossip as I have heard myself, but there's not a lot of inside information about the new features that are going to come, although they have been adding features the entire time the tool has been out. Google likes to keep some of that stuff kind of close to the vest, but they're definitely listening. So if you're seeing a feature that's missing and it's not something I mentioned, go ahead and ask about that during the Q&A, and I'll let you know if I have heard anything. So if you've ever used Google Sites, you know that it was kind of stuck in the early 2000s or the late 90s as far as its interface. It was not a pretty interface, and it had a lot of kind of clunky or counterintuitive controls going on. Once you figured it out, it was one of those things that you got a flow going. It was pretty easy to make a website. And if you're familiar with other website creation tools, it was probably a little easier to pick up. But there are still things that were just a little weird. So with this new update, they've changed it a lot. They've made it look a lot more modern. If you're familiar with modern CMS type web creation tools, or if you're familiar with something like Wix or Weebly, which is something that a lot of teachers I know tend to use because it's kind of easy. It makes a really pretty website. Those web-based web creation tools, it's very similar to those. So it'll look a little more familiar if you've used Wix or Weebly. It's definitely better integrated with Google Drive and apps. You can actually create one straight from your drive. It makes a lot more sense in some ways. So we'll take a look at what they've added, what isn't there yet, and how it kind of works this time around. So to find the new sites, it's a little bit different. If you used to access sites, there's a couple of ways you could have gotten there. Most people just went to sites.google.com, and there was all of the sites that you had created, and there was a big red new button. And you can still get to sites that way. When they do an early release, they don't kind of push that brand new tool out to everyone. You can still use the old sites, so don't panic about that if you're concerned. Your administrator, the person who controls your Google domain, actually has to enable the new sites tool. And if they have, then you'll be able to go in and get this. If you're logged into your Google account and you're kind of clicking around as I'm talking, you'll be able to see once you're in Google Drive and you click that new button, if you go to more and let that pop out where you'd see forms and drawings and stuff, you'll see Google Sites down there. And you can create a new site right from there. And the sites are stored there, so that you can kind of see them in your drive. You can also find a link to it in the old Sites tool sidebar. So if you're already looking in the old Sites tool, there's a link down below that says try the new Google Sites. You can click on that. Or you can type into your Omnibar, sites.google.com/new, and that will take you to this tool that I'm about to show you. So the interface looks a little bit different. Well, it looks a lot different. Let's be honest. This is a lot different. When it loads up a new page, it kind of gives you a template, gives you a big header, and then a content area down below. And my little diagram here with all of my goofy Monty Python stuff kind of shows you where stuff is. So you have this right-hand sidebar, and that's where pretty much all of your action happens for what you're adding to your page. It will give you a placeholder for that header, and then you can go in and change the text, change some of the things about it. On that right sidebar, if you're on you have Insert, Pages, and Themes tabs, and the one you're looking at right now is the Insert tab. And that gives you some content types you can put onto your page. So if you click text box, a text box will pop over into your content area, and you can kind of drag it around a little bit. You have an opportunity to put an image in, an upload, or embed a URL. And then down below are all your embed from Google Apps tools. And that's the stuff that you would have found in the insert menu in the old sites. So it's a little bit similar. You'll notice that there are not quite all the same options. Some of those options I expect will be coming back, and some of them might not. Up at the top, you have this top control bar that gives you another few options. You have an undo and redo little arrows. The eyeball is your preview, so that's similar to the way the new Google Forms works. So if you use Forms, when you want to see what your form looks like to the people you're sending it to, you click the eyeball, and it shows you that actual form that you're sending out to other people. This is the same. You want to see your page as others will see it once you've published it. You click the eyeball, and it'll show you what that looks like. And it actually has a mobile and desktop view. So when you click on that, and we might go over to the interface and look at it, when you click on that, you can see the desktop view, and you can also see what it's going to look like on a tablet and a phone. And it does a pretty good job of designing it so it responds to the screen size. I was fairly impressed with that, because that doesn't always work the way that we hope it's going to. And it sure is nice to not have to worry about resizing stuff and making different versions of sites and making a mobile version and all that stuff, because we know so many people are looking at our sites with mobile devices these days. And when I teach Google Sites, I always try to start with, when I do a whole class on it, the purpose and the design for making a site. So if you are actually new to making a site, and I'm going to kind of take a little sidebar here out of the tool itself and just kind of talk philosophy for a minute. Think about why you want a site. The whole point is to communicate with your audience. So make sure you know your audience. If your audience is parents, students, both, make sure that you're creating a site that really is useful to them, that speaks to them, and that will be useful for what they are trying to get from you information-wise. And once you know who your audience is, think about what you want to do. What are you communicating? Do you want two-way communication? Are you just giving them a bunch of kind of static information that you want to be sitting somewhere for them to be able to refer back to? Is your site dynamic and ever-changing, and you want to have updates that people can check back for? All of that stuff kind of affects how you design your site. And with the new tool, you'll have some options that will kind of lend themselves, depending on the purpose of your site, to the way you want to create it. You can also add editors to your site. So that little familiar button that looks like the plus person, which is our share or add collaborators button in some of the other Google apps, will help you add someone to your site that you wish to have edit it. That is not how you add viewers. That is how you add editors. And instead of a share button, you have a publish button, and the little drop down next to publish gives you your settings for how you're publishing it. And we'll go into that a little bit more later on. In this screenshot, I kind of went over to the themes tab on that sidebar. So this gives you an idea of some of the options that you have when you design your page. Now, there are not a lot of them, and if you are familiar with some of these other design programs, or even if you've used a different web-based design program like Canva or something like that, you'll notice that you can do a lot of stuff, but it doesn't give you every option you could think of. And the reason is it's trying to keep you from making something ugly. and yes, of course we go, I wouldn't make anything ugly. How dare you, computer? You don't know better than me. And sometimes the computer doesn't. But the idea is to kind of help you adhere to basic principles of good web design to keep things simple and uncluttered and readable. And there are some kind of built-in safeguards for this in this tool, and it can be a little frustrating at times, but you can see there are different text styles, and within those you can change your font and your color of your highlight. So you have a few kind of themes that you can overlay. And then with each text box you add, you have some options too. So it can take a little while to get used to the constraints, but it also can make things a lot easier when you're designing this way. It'll also do things like if I want to use a photo as a background for text, it will automatically adjust the contrast or the intensity of the photo behind it for readability. And it does a fairly good job of that. It's not perfect, but I think they're working on that. So it does try to keep communication in mind as it helps you create the site. So there are some new features with this tool, and you can see with my little animated GIF that's moving around down there, that actually shows you the difference between the mobile view. This is the phone view. This is the desktop computer view. There's a tablet view in the middle. And so this is me previewing what my page looks like on all these different devices. Pretty handy. What they call that, excuse me, is responsive design. And it's pretty much a standard now for web creation. That's not something that was accounted for in the old version of sites. In the old version, you would have a checkbox that said automatically adjust site for mobile phones, but I'm sure any of you who have gotten pretty heavily involved in sites and tried that have noticed that it doesn't quite work the way you would like it to. So this is definitely better in that way. Excuse me. When previously, when you published a site, your administrator for your district could either say that you could publish sites or that you couldn't. And you may or may not know this depending on how involved you are in Google stuff, but you are in a user organization in your Google domain. That means that your administrators can give teachers certain permissions, students certain permissions, office staff different permissions. They can choose what kind of stuff you can do in Google based on your role. And the new sites actually respects the permissions that your administrator sets for your user organization or your group. So before, we could either say that students could publish websites or they couldn't. And then we didn't have a lot of control over whether they published them out to the world or just within the district, which is problematic for a number of reasons. And a lot of districts just decided that students couldn't use sites and couldn't publish websites at all because there wasn't enough control. And we know that we need students to be making websites now. It's something they're going to have to know how to do as a general skill. It's useful for portfolios. We have lots of kids in vocational and CTE classes that really need this skill. So the new settings are actually a lot better because as an administrator, I can say, okay, students can publish, but they can't publish outside the district. Or I can set more kind of granular control over that, and that's kind of nice. Again, new tool. How it works in practice has not been really seriously tested, but I've tested it with a few of my fake students, and it has worked pretty well. So I think that's going to be a lot better for using this tool with students. If you have questions about that, you're going to need to probably ask your Google administrator. So whoever it is that would reset your password if you were having problems might be the person to ask. If you find that you can't create a site at all, then that could be why they may not have enabled that for your organization. And some districts are very freaked out about the idea of people creating websites and representing information to the public officially from their district. So if you find that your district doesn't let you do that, it might be worth asking them if they have created or can implement a policy for what kind of information can go on a website so that they can open that up and feel a little better about people using this tool, because it's really essential that all of us are using these kinds of tools because this is the way the world is going. Mobile editing, something you couldn't do before in sites was actually edit your site on the phone or the tablet. And I will tell you, I have not tried this, but I have heard that it works fine. So apparently you can go in from your browser, your Chrome browser, on your phone or tablet, and you can edit your site. I am looking forward to seeing how that works. It doesn't sound like fun to me. It doesn't sound like a real easy way to go about things, but it sure is nice to have the option, especially if you're out and about and you see a horrible typo and it's driving you crazy, or you need to change some last minute information. I know here in our area, as with a lot of areas, we have been snowed in for about a week, and it has been insane in a lot of ways. And if you find an inclement weather situation is affecting something and you want to update your website and you're not close to your computer, it would be really nice to have that option. So that is working now. Like I said, can't vouch for how well it works myself, but I'm going to try it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it works. Drag and drop editing. It's not fully drag and drop, like I can't drag something out of that sidebar and just stick it where I want on the page. But once I have a few elements in place on my page, I can move them around up, down, and I can kind of split the layout. I'll show you a little bit of that. Which makes things a little bit more convenient, because it's kind of what you see is what you get to some extent. It makes it a lot easier to design and lay out your site. So there are a few things that are missing, and actually not a lot, but some of them are kind of important for those of us who are more advanced users. API and scripting access are not a part of the new sites. If you don't know what those are, then you're probably not going to miss them, so don't worry about it. If you do miss them and you have used API or been doing scripting, the old sites was not really nice about scripting anyway, and it tended to just strip out things that it didn't think were nice, and that was really frustrating. But the rumor has it that they do have plans to put that back in. When, I could not tell you, but that is what I hear. It's nothing official, it's just what I have heard. So I'm assuming that they're going to put those back in because they're pretty powerful tools. Gadgets are also missing. If you were familiar with the gadget gallery in the old sites, it was a thing that would let you insert a little embedded tool, which could be something like a little aquarium where the fishies swim around on your page, which was one of my favorite ones. It was really cute. Or a weather widget, or a slideshow, or something. And if you ever used it, you know that there was a little bit of good stuff in there. You also probably know there was a lot of sketchy stuff in there, and a lot of stuff that just didn't work because it basically had been abandoned for many years. And Google is usually pretty good about vetting what they allow to be embedded into their apps. Like if you do an add-on for Docs, you can be pretty confident that it's not anything nefarious or sketchy or gross. The same could not be said for the Gadgets Gallery, so I'm actually glad it's gone. I do hope they will replace it. But I always had to warn teachers when I was teaching the old Google sites that if that's enabled for your students, do know that they're one click away from embedding a slideshow of bikini babes into their school website, which was not optimal. I taught middle school for a long time, and I can tell you it wouldn't take, your head would spin so fast, it would take them no time at all to find something like that that they could put in their site. And then you get a call from the principal, and it's just not a great day. So I'm glad it's gone. I hope they will replace it with something better. I'm sure they will, or they will allow people to do add-ons or embeds for sites. I'm just not sure how that will be incorporated into the tool. Sidebars. As far as having options for different types of navigation, the navigation available is all horizontal navigation across the top, and it will build that for you into your site. But as far as choosing a left-hand sidebar that stayed the same across all your pages, maybe with navigation or maybe with like your contact info, that kind of stuff, doesn't really have that option at this time. Several things have been added back in, like I've said, that were missing when they first released the tool, so I would expect that something like that might show up. But that's a big design issue, and Google adheres to a principle called material design with its new tools, which does not usually include the sidebar. I'm a fan of the sidebar, but Google does not seem to be. So we will see if that comes back or not, or if scripting comes back, or they allow you to change layouts in such a way that you can embed that. Embedding via iframe doesn't work. To be honest, I have not been able to make it work in the old sites for quite a while either, no matter what I did. So there are some embeds that you can do, but the iframe embed doesn't really work. I think they'll probably fix that because it's pretty necessary for some tools that we use. ThingLink and things like that can be hard to embed. As I kind of went over before, the themes, the colors, the whole layout, not fully customizable. There are some options. You can put whatever pictures or images you want into your site, but you can't really just totally design it from the ground up. And, you know, you could go into the page settings or the site settings for your old Google site and pick any hideous color of the rainbow or outside the rainbow that you wanted for your background and your text and everything. And it was a very complicated and annoying interface, but you did have a high level of control. You don't have that high level of control, but you also don't have that frustrating interface. So that's kind of a wash there. I think they are going to add more customization options, but I think they're still going to kind of force you to adhere to design principles that they think are useful. Excuse me. And there's a great side-by-side comparison at Stiegel.com, and I'm going to go over to that really quickly just to show you if it will load. Stiegel does a lot of great information about Google Sites and Google Apps and stuff. And I like this page just because it really goes heads up and says, hey, I did this old thing in my old site, and can I do that in the new one? And you can see there's some stuff missing here, but there's also some new stuff in the new sites that is not there in the classic sites. So you can go through that list and get some information about how that works. So here you can see you had 500 font choices in the old sites. You only have 3 in the new one. I think it's actually up to 5 now. It does keep changing, and they are updating this page, but they don't really announce when they make these changes. Google doesn't tell you. It just magically appears. So sometimes it takes them a while to get caught up. Anyway, that's a handy resource for you to check out if you do decide to look into this. So I'm going to give you some time for questions. And if anybody would like me to pop over into the actual Sites tool and click around so you can see a little bit about how it works, I'm happy to do that. Some of you may prefer to do that on your own, but if you have any questions, now would be a great time to ask.
Hi, Catherine. This is Stephanie. Yeah, I'll keep an eye on these questions coming in. Something that jumped to mind for me was, is there the ability to see what the code looks like? Is that part of the learning experience for kids to see, oh, what does this HTML look like in my site?
That's pretty important, and I think they actually address that in here. I can't remember. I don't think you can see it the same way. See, you can't edit it,
Okay.
but I'm not sure if you can just display it. I agree that's an important part of learning for anyone, you know, especially students. But I'll show you the interface really quick here.
Okay.
I just created a new site from Drive, and this is what it looks like. I can click right on that header and change what it says. I have a little bit of control over the alignment of it here and the type of font I'm using, but not a lot, you know. And I can change what I want this header to look like. So this is what I mean by limited options. I can't really go in and hard code this, like I said, to have it look exactly like I want. But I have some choices, and if I don't like the background of that, I can go in and choose a different one. I have a lot of options here. and it will adjust for readability and kind of fade it out a little bit so that it makes sure that I can read my title. If I want to put a text box in, I can click, I can type whatever I want. I could put an image down below that. There's a picture. Maybe let me actually put that in. And then once I have my picture in here, I can kind of drag it around. And this was something they didn't have at first. I can align this to the side of this text box, so now I could write a paragraph about what was going on in this photo. That's us at one of our Google Summits, in case you're wondering, who are these people? That's my team. So that's, you have some options with layout, not a ton, but more than they had when they first released the tool. Stephanie, were there any more questions?
Well, yeah, I think you just kind of answered that one because there is
Oh,
another question though. But the first one was about can you edit the source code? So you kind of covered that.
yeah,
Um,
definitely not yet. I sure hope that they will change that because there are a lot of frustrated web people, myself included, who like the new interface and like that it's easier, but we also need just a little more control. Advanced users generally tend to feel that way. So I think they're going to accommodate us eventually, but no word on when.
oh, that's good to know. Yeah, and I think it's just if you don't know anything about code, you can learn a lot by just looking at it and figuring out
Absolutely.
like, oh, okay. Um, so the other question that came in is it possible to make the header smaller or shorter? Like, can you change that part?
You have this little
Header
header
type.
type thing, and you can go title only, and that takes that picture out from behind it completely. And I don't think you can like put a narrow picture behind it. You
So
can
if you're
do
going with
some.
the picture, it looks like it's going to be the
It's going to be
taller.
a little, yeah, a little bit fatter there, and then you can do this really big one too. So
Okay.
there's those limitations.
But yeah, at least there's a few different options in
Yep.
there. Um, so I'm curious about maybe you covered some of this, but what you can insert, like it's got Google Sheets and charts, you can actually draw from your Google files and put them in your site.
Yeah, you can, and I'll show you one of my little test sites that I came up with, that I was playing around with this. And some of this is what you saw the screenshots from. Here we go. And I basically embedded every kind of thing in here that I could think of just so I could see how it worked. So this is
Hmm.
a ridiculous looking site. But so there's my header, and I had some options for changing that. Again, same options there. I could change the image if I wanted to, and it will kind of adjust everything so I can read it. There's just an image there. Here's these little tiny handles that you can barely see, these little goosebumps when I hover over it. That's what lets me move this around. And then I could put this up next to my picture. And when I click on it, I get this pop-up that allows me to change the type of font or type of text I have going in there. I can choose bold, italic, centered. I can make bullet points, so I have a couple of list options, and I can make a link in here, and I can delete the whole thing. So those are the options that I have within my text blocks. They are limited, but there are some. I was excited to see that animated GIFs are supported because that's like half my life is based in these things. I'm kind of weird about that, but I really like them. They're actually a really great teaching tool, but they're also, entertaining. So the old sites didn't really support them. You had to do this weird little workaround. So I'm glad to see that they've joined us in the modern age there. This is an embedded document. This is an embedded YouTube, and here was just me talking to myself about how I could do this. Each of these boxes or strips here, since I added this text box and then I dragged the YouTube video up next to it, I have some options that show up out here. They've got this little palette, and so I can make that just regular. I can change the style a couple of different ways. I can put an image behind that whole block. So that's kind of nice, really quick way, especially if you're trying to put together a site really quickly and have it look really nice. It will keep you kind of in the same theme. So if you look at the theme that I've selected, my highlight color is that fuchsia pink color, and it'll keep me with that same color scheme. Even if I choose to change it, it'll change it with all of my emphasis blocks that I use throughout the site, which is kind of nice. Unifying design. This is an embedded custom Google My Map, and you can see if I drag it around, it thinks I want to move the element. If I want to actually see it working live in my site, I'm going to hit preview. And this is showing me the desktop preview, as you can see. Here is my embedded, whoops, sorry, I can't scroll apparently. Here's my embedded Google Doc. And if I hit pop out, it'll open it in Docs for me. As usual, if you embed a Google thing, you need to make sure that it is visible to the site, the audience you're sharing your site with. I believe that it gives you a warning now when you embed something from your Google Drive to make sure that you've shared it properly first. Here's my live map. Behaves just like Google Maps. I can zoom in and out, do all the usual stuff you would expect from a Google Map, so that's kind of cool. It's amazing how handy Google Maps can be to embed right into a site. And if you're not familiar with Google My Maps, I suggest taking a look. You can create these custom areas that are shaded and directions. You can delineate parking areas next to your school. There's just a lot of fun stuff you can do with that. Another sidebar, but I really love all these tools, so I tend to go off on them a little bit. Here's an embedded slideshow from a different webinar. An embedded Google Drive folder. So if you had a whole folder of resources you wanted to share with your students, you can embed it here, and it'll pop it out into the Drive interface. If I click on that, load it up. So this is a thing link, and if anybody's familiar with thing link, I'm supposed to have these little dots. You're supposed to be able to hover over them and have them pop out a cool little caption for that part of the image. But it was not working, so I think they still have some work to do with the embedding. This is a Vimeo embed, but it's not a public video. So anyway, you can see how, whoops, I keep just scrolling in the wrong place there. You can see how all of those different embeds would work.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for showing that. And I'm glad you talked about Google My Maps too, because I encourage people, there'll be a link at the end of this webinar that they can see all the previously recorded webinars, and you did a really great one on
That's
Google
right,
My
you
Maps.
did do a webinar on it.
Yeah,
Yes, I talk about it every chance I get. I love it.
there'll be a link at the end. And here's another question. Would you recommend Google Sites for student portfolios? And do you have any comments on using it for that purpose?
I think the new Google Sites would be way better for portfolios than the previous one. There are some missing features that have been missing for a long time that I think they need to improve before it's really viable. So here's the thing that I think of, or the questions that I get when that's a question I get from teachers a lot of the time, from a lot of different levels, CTE teachers, language arts teachers, middle school, high school. Everybody wants their kids to be making portfolios because they're just such a great tool for us to teach the kids to, do some student-centered learning and kind of put responsibility on them. I think this current tool is way better than the old sites because the learning curve for the old sites is just incredible. And I had a class full of really smart kids, and I taught them how to use sites, and I was so excited. They were sixth graders, and then I said, go make a site. And I got this like deer in the headlights. And I was like, you can do it. And I waited for about a week. And then I had to face reality. They were like, we can't. So, it's hard, even for really, really bright kids to learn the old sites. This is much more intuitive. Kids will pick it up really fast. That's the advantage. And it will make sense to them. And it's visually appealing. I think all of that stuff is a great advantage. One of the things that is still missing, that was missing from the old sites also, is the ability to easily make a thumbnailed gallery of photos, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you try to do it manually. So if I have like 24 pictures of the progress I made on a service learning project and I want to share that as a student. I can put them into a Google slideshow and embed that into my site. I could put them into a Google folder and embed the folder into my site, which isn't optimal from a design perspective. But I can't just do what everybody else does everywhere on the web ever, which is have a small version of the picture and you click on it and it gets big. Why can't I do that? I don't know why you can't do that in Google Sites, but you've never really been able to do it in Google Sites. There were several gadgets in the gadget gallery that claimed to have that ability. None of them ever worked properly in my experience. So it's a continuing frustration. I think you could easily work around it with the suggestions that I kind of mentioned there, but I'm hoping that they will add that one fundamentally pretty basic thing to this tool.
Okay, that's good.
I hope I
Yeah,
answered your
that
question sometime in that rant. Yes, I do think
I
you could use it for portfolios.
I'll wait and see if Tom, who asked the question, needs any follow-up. But in the
Okay.
meantime, we have another great question. We have a teacher, Lisa, who would like to see like how to add pages and what navigation options there are. Could you do a
Not
demo of adding
sure.
pages?
Sure, there's not a ton. So here I am adding a page,
You can go to
and it's,
pages. Okay.
yeah, I just go to pages in this tab over here, then I click new, page two. Okay, okay. So here it's flipped me over to page two, and my list appears here. And if I do a page three, excuse me, I can, you see I've got my little goosebump handles here. And I've got my overflow menu that gives me a few options. I can change this so one of these is my home page. I can remove it from the site. I can hide it. And I can drag these around. Okay. And I can also nest them. You can see what happens. That little dot shows up. It's very subtle. I always think that like Google is definitely run by people in their 20s because I'm in my 40s and they like to put things on tiny little dots and triangles and stuff that my old eyes can't see. I'm like, what's going on here? But if you pull that over, it's actually nested below it, so you'll get a drop-down menu. And this is your navigation. So I'm going to go back to home, and you'll see that if I hover over it, it goes down and I can go to page three or to page two. The reason that page two shows up as a drop down is because I nested it under there. Excuse me. So this is actually new. They now will allow me to have side navigation. That was not there about a week ago. But I'm not sure let me see if it shows up in my preview. And there aren't a lot of options. Oh, that's cool. That actually looks better than I was expecting. So it doesn't look like there are a lot of options for adding stuff. I'm going to close my preview here and go back to my edit mode. So here I am. I have the horizontal navigation enabled, but I can't really like see it unless I flip that out. See, now it's going to give me a little bit of an option here. But I think it kind of hides some of these options from you, so you really have to know. They're trying to keep it very standardized. So this three lines menu is something you're probably familiar with, and you see it on a lot of mobile sites, and they're trying to keep it really standard, which is awesome. Web, I don't know, what are we to 3.0 now? 4.0, I don't know, but that's the standard. And it'll give me a little bit of guidance. Say I can move my pages around here. But that's really all the options we have right now. Wait, no, okay. What are you doing? I'm trying to unnest that and it's kind of giving me trouble. So anyway, you do have some options. See how I hover over that and they've got that little translucent bar, and then once I'm hovering, I can get my little sprocket that tells me which kind of navigation I want. So that is definitely something else they've added in. So I always find that encouraging, even though they never say, hey guys, guess what? We put this back. Sometimes just things will show up and then you have that option again. Normally they'll only actually make an announcement that they put something back. If they took something away and everyone raised holy heck about it and were really mad, and then they will let you know, okay, we fixed it. But most of the time they don't. So I
Okay,
hope
that's
that
cool.
is helpful.
Yeah, I like the two options. I think that was good. I I think that answered that question. And then we had another one about photo editing options. Are you able to like crop or make any other editing changes to your
Yeah,
photos?
a little bit. So if I click on my photo here, you can see I get my handles. I can do that. Remember, it's trying to do a proportional resize, so it's just making it bigger.
Hmm.
But eventually, if I squish it enough, it'll make it kind of weird. So I can just do that. I can crop it, and then I can choose my crop there.
Okay.
Um, this will kind of restore it back to its full size. I can make the photo link to something, um, or type something in there. It's giving me the option to put it to a site in my, or page in my site. I can trash it. I can replace it. Oh, and this is actually something I should mention. You have the opportunity to add your alt text, which is something to think about. Multiple districts in my state have recently been sued for accessibility violations. If you are a public entity, you're required to make your sites accessible to the public, depending on the kind of information you're presenting. I am not a lawyer, but I do think it's a good idea legally and also just kind of ethically, because you don't know who's going to be looking at your site, to try and remember to put alt text in on your images. So if you have a low vision or a blind person who is accessing your site, if you've ever seen how a screen reader works, it just kind of starts at the top and says, here is the banner, and it says hi there, and then it goes down here, and it just kind of tells them what's on the page. But an image that doesn't have any alt text will just be like, here's an image. And then the person who can't see it is like, what's it an image of? So it's not very helpful. So it's a good habit to get into. I'm not saying that you as a teacher or your students or anything are going to get sued if you don't do this. I'm just saying not a bad thing to think about. And Google actually does make it easy, because this is a photo that I had saved into my Google Plus, and it has a caption, and it says, oh, this is probably good alt text, and so I can set that as my description right there. And that doesn't put any text on my actual page. I could put that over here if I wanted it as a caption. But it just adds it so that a screen reader can see it and actually read what the picture is about. So now I'm curious about something, and I'm going to switch this over to horizontal or sidebar navigation, and I want to see what that looks like on the phone because I don't know how they handle that. See, I learn things the whole time I'm teaching. It's just how it works. Yep, it just puts that little guy out. That actually looks pretty nice. Impressive. Were there any other questions?
Yeah, you kind of showed it with the photograph, but someone would like to see a demo of adding a link in the text.
Oh, sure. My nonsense over here. So I'm just typing in my text, and then I just select that text, and you can see this is always hovering over no matter where I am in this text box. This little pop-up is there. I just click this little link button. I also have a keyboard shortcut, Control K. Excuse me. And once I click that, I can say, whatever site I want, and I hit apply. There's my link. And if I preview it, still in mobile, it'll take me to that link. And remember, I can also make a link directly from the image, so you could click on the photo. Same deal. So I should put this back in desktop mode. That layout leaves something to be desired in desktop mode. I love that preview. Makes it really easy to see. So that's how you do that. Does that answer the question?
That I mean, that looked really clear to me. Yeah, I personally don't have a lot of experience with the first sites, but to me this looks very intuitive. Like if kids were trying to guess how to do
Yes.
stuff, it seems a little easier for them to figure it out. Um,
Yes, having taught students how to use the old sites, I can tell you I am not going to miss it for that reason at all.
yeah. let's see, I'll give people another minute if any other questions come in, and of course at the end I'll have the contact information where if I get some questions that I don't know the answer, I can ask you or they can email you
Sure.
directly.
Yeah,
Um,
and then speaking of the old sites, I should mention I'm dredging this up out of my memory. The new sites is or the old sites. If you have sites in the old classic sites, it's going to be available throughout 2017. It's not going away. But it would be nice to kind of get on the boat for this new one because in 2018 they're going to release a transition plan and they're going to turn off the old sites in 2018. So you have the rest of the year to get familiar with the new one and for them to put back the stuff they took out, which they need to put back some of it. And then they're going to release a tool that will allow you to migrate your classic sites to the new sites. So if you do have a lot of stuff in the old sites and you don't want to lose it, don't panic. You don't have to do a bunch of manual stuff. Hopefully there will be a pretty good site to move it over, or a good tool to move it over, although I can't tell you how that's going to look yet. But Google has officially announced that that's what they're going to do.
that's good. I was actually curious about that. I'm sure
Yeah.
other people were as well.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds like a good timeline, to get people used to it before everything goes away on the old side and migrates.
Definitely.
Well, this has been really great, and of course, we'll post this recording so people can go back and review it and share it.
All right. Awesome.
But yeah, I'll go ahead and take the screen back unless you had anything else you wanted to show us.
Nope. I think that was it. Yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions that come up if I can.
Yes, let me get my screen. All right, are you seeing the slides here? I
Yes.
hope. Now it says, here we go. Oh, that's not what I want to show. Why is that showing up? Don't you love when that happens? Okay. Nothing top secret though. All right. So, um, yes, thanks everybody for attending today. I've got some links and emails up for you. My email here and Catherine's below. And if you go to ctl.info/webinars, this recording will be available, and I encourage everybody to look through the whole library. We have lots and lots of webinars. Some are by Katherine. She mentioned the Maps one today. That was a really good one. But lots of stuff to do with the Google apps, or I guess it's G Suite for education now, and using Chromebooks in your classroom. And we also have the opportunity for people to get this certificate of completion. There's a brief survey, and so again, this will be emailed to you, so you don't have to memorize this link right now, but I'm just showing it to you in case anyone's eager to jump on it right now. You can answer these questions and get a PDF of your certificate of completion for today. So I think that concludes today. Thank you, Katherine, for your presentation. And thanks everyone else for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.